Hi, I'm Dr. Muscle, and in this video we'll discuss how to symbolize more complicated claims, again using logical notation. Logical notation meaning basic claim variables and logical operation symbols, right? So conjunction, negation, etc. So I think the authors did a good job sort of outlining what exactly our objective is when we go about symbolizing these claims, right, in logical notation. We're trying to clarify in a nice, concise way what's going on logically, right? So we want to take whatever is expressed in the average, everyday, ordinary sentence or sentences, right, and put it in much clearer and concise logical notation. The ultimate goal being, right, or what we want to make sure we're doing, as they point out, right, is that what we result with, right, or whatever our logical notation ends up being, that better be truth functionally equivalent to the average everyday sentences that we started with, right? We want what we end up producing via the logical notation to be truth functionally equivalent to whatever was expressed originally, right, that we're translating. And what that means is that our logical notation, right, whatever we end up producing in terms of the claim variables and the operational symbols, that better be true whenever the original sentence would be true, and it better be false whenever the original sentence would be false, right? So what we produce is true and false at the exact same times as the original sentence that was expressed would have been true and false, right? So hopefully that makes sense. Again, we want to maintain truth functional equivalency, right? So whatever we're producing better be truth functionally equivalent to whatever we started with, okay? Again, it can get much more complicated, right? When you're dealing with average everyday sentences, they can get pretty complex. And so we need a couple sort of basic strategies when it comes to attacking these, right, in terms of trying to translate them. The first thing I guess I'd point out is the importance of commas. Incredibly important. The location of a comma can completely change the meaning of what's being expressed, right? And so I have up here what I think is a perfect example. Now the verbiage in each one of these is actually exactly the same. The only thing that's different is the location of the comma, right? Here it's here, and then the second one it's here, right? But that changes the logical meaning of the expressions entirely, right? So these actually are not saying the same thing, even though they have the exact same words. They're not saying the same thing at all, and that's because of the location of the comma. And so as logicians, right, as critical thinkers, it's imperative that we keep an eye out for where these commas are, because that's going to dictate important things, right, when it comes to translating these into logical notation. Okay. So on the flip side of that, then, it's going to be equally important when it comes to our logical notation to indicate important components of our logical notation by including parentheses, right? So we're going to use parentheses to sort of indicate what things go together and which things are inside sort of greater claim or the larger claim. And that'll make sense here in a moment when we go through some examples. But let's go ahead and try to real quick translate these two and see how they're actually different, right? So if the Patriots win, then I will lose my mind. That's all expressed as one thing, right, here at the very beginning before the comma. So that's taken together. If the Patriots win, if P, then, right, it's a conditional, then I will lose my mind, and let's represent that with an L, okay? Or let's actually use something else, because I'm going to use L for LeBron's Lakers. Let's say M for my mind. I'm going to lose my mind, okay? So that's all taken together, okay? And we're going to use parentheses, rather, to indicate that this is supposed to be taken together. And then we have, after that, right, something that's distinct, and, so it sounds like a conjunction overall. LeBron's Lakers will make the playoffs. So, right, that's one claim. So we'll just use a basic claim variable of L for that, right? So, again, overall, this expression, right, in general or overall is a conjunction. And for its conjuncts, on the right conjunct, it has just one claim, right? LeBron's Lakers will make the playoffs. And on the left side, the left conjunct is inside the parentheses, right? That's a conditional. Okay, so again, we indicate, right? That's meant to be taken together by using these parentheses in the appropriate places. Okay, if you move that parenthesis at all, right, it can completely change the way it reads, right? Now this is if P happens, then both M and L will happen, right? Completely different. Again, what we're indicating is completely different depending on where we have the parentheses, okay? So the left conjunct again here would be if the Patriots win, then I will lose my mind, or if P, then M, okay? So that's how this first expression, again, given where the comma is, ought to be translated into logical notation, okay? So what about the second expression, okay? If the Patriots win, comma, so that by itself should be taken by itself, right? Just that little bit that comes before the comma. Then, okay, I will lose my mind, M, and LeBron's Lakers will make the playoffs. So here, and actually I think that's what I switched it to momentarily there for a moment, right, before. So here we have overall this expression is actually a conditional, okay, completely different than the first expression, and it's all because of where the comma is, okay. So the antecedent, right, of this conditional is if the Patriots win, and then everything after the comma is the consequent of the conditional. Then I will lose my mind, and LeBron's Lakers will make the playoffs, okay. So again, even though they have the same exact words, these actually express two completely different things, right? That'll be true and false at completely different times, possibly. Okay, so, and if I were to try to read this, right, incorporating that comma, it might be something like, if the Patriots win, then I will lose my mind, and LeBron's Lakers will make the playoffs. Versus, if the Patriots win, then I will lose my mind, and LeBron's Lakers will make the playoffs. Right? So, again, comma is incredibly important, and then on the flip side, once you get to your logical notation, the parentheses are equally important, and they kind of work together in the translation process, right? You're starting with commas, and that's going to sort of dictate sort of what you end up with in your logical notation, right, and using the parentheses. Okay, so emphasis on commas, emphasis on parentheses, definitely two sort of tips, right, or things to keep in mind, I would say, as you're attacking these more complicated claims and trying to translate them into logical notation. And then I guess the last thing I'd mention before we do some practice exercises here, or practice problems, would be to just keep in mind the basic indicator words for these operational symbols, right? So in other words, remember and, or a conjunction, or anything that links two distinct claims that are meant to be taken together, right? But even something like as well as, right? Paula will go as well as Johnny, right? So that would be P and J, right? So again, these are indicator words. They're indicating certain sort of operational symbols will be at play when we try to translate the claim. Negation, not the case, or it isn't true, right? Something along those lines, that's going to then indicate negation. Disjunction, we usually have, the buzzword is usually or, right? Or sometimes either or, right? So either Hank will go or I will go, right? That's indicating a disjunction. And then conditional, right, is usually if, then, but it doesn't always have to be, right? Provided blah, 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 blah happens, then something else will happen, right? So provided, sometimes when you hear that, that's going to indicate or signal a conditional as well. So keep in mind the buzzwords, and of course we've already mentioned those in a previous video, and they talk a lot about those in the textbook. But that's going to then be a good indication of what sort of symbol you're going to be using when it comes to translating a certain claim into logical notation. So I thought what I would do here is just go through some of the ones on 9.2, that exercise, specifically starting with number 11 and kind of working my way down, see how many I can get through here for you. These are actually part of the supplemental exercises that I provided the answers for. So go ahead and maybe pause this or try having done these yourself first, and then then go ahead and watch me kind of go through them. The idea being, hopefully, seeing me work through it will help you with your own process, trying to go through them as well. So I'm going to go ahead and put a key up here, like they do in the textbook. It's always important to be very clear what the claim variables are indicating, right, in the key. So C will stand for my car runs well. Okay. S will stand for I will sell my car. And then finally F will stand for I will have my car fixed. Okay, and I'll just, like I said, start with number 11 and kind of work my way down on some of these. So 11 reads, if my car doesn't run well, then I will sell it. Okay, so hopefully it's pretty clear we have a conditional here. If my car doesn't run well, so what's the antecedent? The first thing mentioned, okay, my car doesn't run well. So here, instead of the basic claim variable C, my car runs well, we're actually dealing with the negation of that. So if it's not the case that my car runs well, right, then the consequent will be I will sell it, or S. Okay, so if it's not the case that C, then S will happen. Okay. I think that one's pretty straightforward. So we'll go ahead and do 12 now. 12 reads, it's not true that if my car runs well, then I will sell it. Okay, this one's a little bit trickier. Right off the bat, this sounds like negation. It's not true that, and then we have a comma. That's going to be important. It signals something else is coming, right? So it sounds like we're negating something here. It's not true that, and then it sounds like we have a conditional coming. If my car runs well, then I will sell it, right? So it's not the case that, and we need parentheses here because all that follows is going to be grouped together. If my car runs well, which is C, then I will sell it, which is S. So that's a huge negation sign there. Oops, let me make it a little smaller here. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. And again, it's important that you have the parentheses in the right place, right? And you're negating the whole thing, not just C, right? So if you only had this, that's a totally different claim, right? That would be if my car doesn't run well, then I'll sell it, right? That's not what we're saying. We're saying the whole conditional that if my car runs well, then I'll sell it is not the case, right? So it's very important that you, again, group things in a proper way via the parentheses, okay? So this would be incorrect, right? We need to negate the entire conditional together, okay? The next one is, I will sell my car only if it doesn't run well. Okay. So we're being told about something about when he or she will sell the car, right? Namely, right, we know that if they sell the car, that was only going to happen if it didn't run well. So if they sold the car, then we know it didn't run well, right? So S for, again, I will sell my car. C for my car runs well, but here we have negation, right? It doesn't run well. Okay, so I will sell my car only if it doesn't run well. We know from that original expression, right, that it would read something like this in logical notation. If S, then it's not the case that C, right? If I sold my car, then it wasn't the case that it ran well, okay? Because that was the only condition or time I would have sold it. Okay, 14. So this actually is the first of a couple of examples where you can sort of translate it two different ways, and the authors seem to prefer one way, and I actually sort of makes more intuitive sense to me to translate it another way. They're both equally correct, and let me show you. I won't sell my car unless, and that's the key word there that we're dealing with here in these sorts of translation problems. The ones I'm indicating here, where there's a couple different ways you can do it, that word unless is involved. I won't sell my car unless it doesn't run well. Okay. So what do we know here? What can we infer from this logically? Well, he or she's not going to sell the car, right, unless it doesn't run well. So we can infer that, look, if they did sell the car, what must have been the case? It didn't run well, right? Otherwise, they wouldn't have sold it, right? So if they did sell it, we know that it didn't run well. Okay. So that's actually the translation that to me makes the most intuitive sense, but it's equally valid to do what they do, right, and treat this as a disjunction. So won't sell my car, either I won't sell my car or doesn't run well. Okay. Again, both of these are equally valid. Okay. If we were to do a truth table, okay, what you had under both of these columns would be exactly the same because they're logically equivalent, truth functionally equivalent. Okay? And that's why it's okay to do either one, either this one or that one. And I encourage you, if you have the time, go ahead and make the truth table and see for yourself how these are in fact logically equivalent. In each row of the truth table, they will have the exact same truth value, either true or false. They'll be true in the exact same scenarios, and they'll be false in the exact same scenarios. Okay, so each one equally valid. $15. Let's do that one. I will have my car fixed unless it doesn't run well. Wait a second, is that right? I will have my car fixed unless it runs well. Oh, my fault. I will have my car fixed unless it runs well. So what do we know here? Here we know that if I don't have my car fixed, right, then it must run well. Okay? Because otherwise I was going to have it fixed, right? So if I don't have it fixed, the implication is, given what's said here, right, that it was running well. Okay? Or, again, given this, right, you could translate it, because it's equivalent to do so, right, as follows. I will either have my car fixed, which would be, what is it, F, or it runs well. One of those two things is going to be the case. So it's not the case that F, if it's not the case that the F, then C, or you can translate it either F or C will be the case. Okay. So those statements with an less in them, kind of interesting in that there's a couple different options available. So 16, I will sell my car but only if it doesn't run well. Here we have, look, I will sell my car, but the only condition or time I will do that if it doesn't run well, right? So we can infer from that that, look, if I sell my car, then it had to have been in the case that it didn't run well, right? So not the case that C. Okay? Otherwise, right, because of that only if, right, otherwise I wasn't going to sell it. I would only sell it if it doesn't run well. Okay, so if I did sell it, then it didn't run well. Okay? So if S, then not the case that C. Okay. And this is another perfect example of something in logic where the more you do it, the more of these problems that you go through and try to translate, the faster you're going to be able to do it, the easier it's going to feel, the quicker you'll be able to do it, like I said. So 17, provided my car runs well, I won't sell it. So what do we know here? Look, if my car, right, basically provided you can just interpret it as if, more or less. So provided or if my car runs well, or C, then the consequent is I won't sell it, right? So the antecedent is car running well or my car runs well, right? Then I won't sell it, or it's not the case that I will sell it. It's not the case that S. So how does this read again? If C, then it's not the case that S. Okay. $18. My car's running well is a sufficient condition for my not having it fixed. So what is this telling us? That, look, if C is the case, right, my car runs well, that's a sufficient condition, or that'll guarantee, right, that I won't have it fixed. There's no reason to have it fixed, so not the case that F. Okay, so sufficient condition you can sort of read as guarantees, right? It'll guarantee that whatever follows won't happen, right? So if this is a sufficient condition for, if X is a sufficient condition for Y, X is guaranteeing that Y will happen. If X happens, then Y, basically. Okay. What is 19? My car's not running well is a necessary condition for my having it fixed. Kind of awkward wording here, but hopefully you can kind of see how this is working. So my car's not running well is a necessary condition for my having it fixed. So for this to happen, for me to get it fixed, this has to be the case. Okay. So if I get it fixed, then we know that the car didn't run well, right? Because it was a necessary condition before I would have it fixed, right? So so you can kind of read this as being something that's required, right, before this will happen. So if this takes place, then in other words, this had to have taken place, right? So my having it fixed, or F, right, if that took place, then we know the car wasn't running well, or not the case that C, okay? That's similar to like oxygen is a necessary condition for combustion. So if you have combustion, then, right, if combustion, then there must have been oxygen, right? Because combustion can't happen without the presence of oxygen. And it's similar here, right? The car won't get fixed unless it wasn't running well, right? It's not running well was deemed or considered a necessary condition for it being fixed. And let's do one last one. The last one, I believe, in 9.2, number 20. I will neither have my car fixed nor sell it. Okay, so this sounds like actually a conjunction, right? It's saying two things are going to be the case. First, I won't have my car fixed, and I'm not going to sell it, right? Neither one of those two things is going to happen. So it's actually a conjunction, right? It's positing that two different things are going to be the case. Namely, I'm not going to fix it, and I'm not going to sell it, right? I will neither have my car fixed nor sell it. So that would be translated into a conjunction with this is the left conjunct, and that is the right conjunct. Okay, so we just went through numbers 11 through 20 on 9.2. Hopefully you find that helpful. And the more of these that you're able to do, the quicker you're going to be able to do them. And pretty soon you'll be able to fly through them pretty quickly. I know it can be pretty daunting at first, especially given the more verbose claims, the more complicated initial claims that you start with. It can be kind of tricky when you're first starting to get those translated properly into logical notation, but practice, 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 like I've been saying, and I'm pretty confident you'll feel very comfortable with it after adequate practice. So again, hopefully you found this video helpful, and good luck studying for the quiz and doing the relevant homework.